Okay, it's part 3 of Philosophy of the Cosmic Dance, and we'll have a sort of talky bit later, and to begin with I'll just explain a bit more of the underlying teaching, and then either next week or the week after I'll start on the symbolism of the ceremony. But I just want to make sure you've got the basis that underlies that. Then when we go through it, it'll be much easier to understand and explain. Now, to start off with, there's just a verse from Rumi I wanted to read, from the Masnavi, which is relevant to what we're going to talk about. And Rumi says, "Thou didst not throw when thou threwest. Whatsoever the soul sowest is from the soul of the soul." And again, "Thou didst not throw when thou threwest. Whatsoever the soul sowest is from the soul of the soul." So bear that in mind. And as you can see, there's a new diagram, and in most non-dual traditions you have the concept of the oneness of everything, and for some people that's enough. They grasp that, then you go off and live life and you don't need anything else. But for many of us, it's often helpful to have the one mind or the one consciousness manifesting as a physical creation through a series of levels. And it's quite a good model and a good framework to understand all your experience and what's going on, and it's very relevant to the ceremony as well. In some traditions, for instance in Christianity, in the early church, they had the concept of body, soul and spirit, which was like 3 levels, which is quite a nice concept, because what it means is that at your deepest identity, you and God are one and the same thing. Whereas in the sort of later Christian church, it just became you were a body, soul, and God was way up there somewhere and separate. So with body, soul and spirit, you and God are one and the same thing. And in the Indian tradition, they have what's known as the 4 levels, which is physical, subtle, causal and divine. And it's very similar to the Christian model. It's just it has a slight subdivision at the subtle and causal. And I'll go through it very simply because it's such a simple thing. And I'll start down here at the bottom. And in this model, the smallest world is what's known as the physical. And on the individual scale, that's your physical body, which consists of flesh and bones. And it can all be weighed and measured by science. And in the big world around, it's a visible universe of 200 billion galaxies or more, all expanding in space. And for many of us, that's the sort of, if someone says, "Who are you?" you'll say, I'm my physical body, and all my experiences and functions are just a result of brain function, and that's it. And then, again, in the Indian tradition, that's contained within what is known as the subtle level. And the subtle level really just means your psychology or your psyche. And that consists of all your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions and your desires. And for the most part, it's a secret world known only to you. So what you're thinking and feeling, another person doesn't know. except to the degree that it's manifested in your physical body. So if you're very angry, then your face gets all red and you shake, and it's clearly visible. And if you're happy, then it's also visible. So what's in the subtle level is manifested in physical level. And that's often referred to in some traditions as the mind-body, or the mind-body mechanism. I think in Zen they refer to it as the mind-body. And I've related that to what we discussed in the previous meetings of I am something. So it's your identity as a separate self in time and space. And in terms of states of consciousness, physical equates with waking state in the daytime. So when you're awake, like most of you are at the moment, then that equates with the physical body. And the subtle body, the psyche, equates with the sleep with dreams. So at night you go to sleep and you enter this world of dreams. I think it's called rapid eye movement sleep because your eyes flutter when you're dreaming. And again, for a lot of people, that's the end of your identity. If someone says, "Who are you?" you say, "I'm my mind and my body, my psychology and my physical body." And as you know, as you go through life, both of those keep changing. This one changes sort of gradually over a period of time, and this one, the subtle body, isn't really in a state of flux all the time. So it's like all during the day, different desires and thoughts and emotions are all arising and falling. And also at the subtle level, you're a bit like a whole theatrical cast of characters. You have all these different characters which arise and fall, and they even sort of like different things, and they're always changing. And as you go through life, more and more characters appear, and some characters fall away. And then, as we've discovered, behind your psyche is what's sometimes described as a great fathomless ocean of stillness. So it's like there's something looking out through your eyes which witnesses the physical body, it witnesses the subtle body. So when you're thinking and when you're feeling, there's something which is aware of your thinking and your feeling. So there's this awareness that lies behind all your psychological activity. And that awareness, again as we've discussed, it can never be observed because it itself is doing the observing. So the psyche can't look back at that. It can only look outwards that way. So it experiences, when you're in your mind-body mechanism, then you experience the outer world as an object. So your mind-body mechanism is the subject and the outer world is the object. So to this bit you say I, and to the outer world you say that. In the Indian tradition they use the words aham and idam, and aham means I and idam means that. But when you notice that both your physical and your subtle body is actually being observed, then that too becomes a that, so it becomes an object. So what had previously been the seat of your identity, the subtle and physical, is realized to be another object in the same way that that chair is an object or the mirror is an object. So in Zen they call that mind-body dropped. So it's the dropping of the soul identity with the physical and the subtle level. So then you start to notice your identity as the deep stillness, which again I've equated with the next stage of I am nothing. that's again because, as we mentioned, you can't look back at it. So it appears as a great open space in which your thoughts and your feelings and your physical body are all arising. And that's not quite the end of the story, because beyond the causal, when your identity is in the causal, it's like you're the still witness of all this changing drama, and there's still a subtle subject-object duality, because it's like you're the stillness looking out on this moving, changing world. And at a certain point, again as we've mentioned, you notice for all experience, all sensations are not taking place out there. You actually experience them inside you. They're within this still presence that is yourself. And that's a point which is really, again, the I am everything. It's the full non-dualism, the realization that you actually don't just stop here, you encompass everything, including the 200 billion galaxies. And again, in terms of states of consciousness, the causal level equates with sleep without dreams. So you go from waking state into subtle level, which equates with sleep with dreams. At a certain point in the night, dreaming stops and you go into dreamless sleep. And with dreamless sleep, as you know, there's totally no experience. There's no experiencer. There's no time. There's absolutely nothing. So you go to bed at midnight and you rapidly go into dreamless sleep, and then you wake up at 7 o'clock. It's almost like it's instantaneous. There's a sort of time at the subtle level in sleep with dreams, but when you're in the causal, it's just, there's total nothing. There's no time, no nothing, and it's very still, and that's really what refreshes you when, again, you come back out into your daytime experience. And in deep meditation, again, that same process happens. If you do meditate, you sit down, your physical body has sensations and they settle down, and then you go into a world of, you notice the thoughts and feelings moving around, and then often at a certain point the thoughts and feelings fall away and there's just stillness, and then thoughts arise again, and so on. And because there's no time at the causal level, a split second at that level can have an effect which can transform a week or a year or a lifetime even. So its effect is out of all duration to the time and space that you spend there. And again, in the turning ceremony, at certain times in the ceremony, it's like you transcend both the physical and the subtle, and you just go into this very still place when it feels like you're being turned. It's like you're not turning. There are so many different uses you can put this particular model to, because it's such a good way of understanding the different experiences that happen. And another interesting way you can look at it is what I call from below or from above. And in Buddhism and in most mystical traditions, they have what they call absolute and relative knowledge. And relative knowledge applies to when you understand yourself to be separate in a world of multiplicity. Then any self-respecting teacher will give what's known as relative knowledge, because it applies to the separate self and how it's going to realize its oneness with the whole. So you're coming at the knowledge from the point of view of separation, whereas absolute knowledge is from the point of a unified state. So you'll often hear with different teachers and different scriptures, and even in Rumi's teaching, but it will contradict itself at times. And the reason it does contradict itself is because of any writer or teacher will speak simultaneously, often both from a relative and an absolute standpoint. So it'll appear that the teacher is saying a completely contrary thing. And often you'll find teachers talk one way to one person and another way to another person. So teaching will completely differ and even contradict itself. And from the point of view of the relative knowledge, that's really the bottom-up view. And the bottom-up view is, it's as if you are a separate entity in time and space, and it's really the model of reductionist science. And as a result of a long process of evolution, you've got this thing deep in your brain which eventually has consciousness, although science, I gather, can't explain consciousness. But it's, from this point of view, consciousness is purely the result of brain function and brain chemistry. So you're this little physical body in this vast mechanical universe, all operating according to the laws of physics. And that's really the relative bottom-up view. Now the top-down view, which is the view of most mystical traditions, is almost sort of turns that view completely on its head. From the point of view of the top-down view, you have to find what is it in your experience that never changes, and there's something, that feeling of presence or stillness, which is there when you're 5 and it's there when you're 55. So that's your basic sense of I am. So if you take that as your starting point, that unchanging feeling of consciousness or stillness, and then we start from here. So say you're in deep sleep at night, you're totally unmanifest, there's totally no experience, and then at a certain point on the screen of consciousness dream images appear. So you've been nothing, you're in total stillness, and then images appear on the screen. And in the dream world, the images often aren't that solid, because you're sort of looking at you're in this great drama, and often sort of things start changing, and which they wouldn't normally do down here. And also within the subtle world, you've created the dream, and you've also created the whole dream world and the dream landscape, and you've also created yourself as a character within the dream, relating to other characters. So that's on the screen of consciousness, is the dream world. Then that changes into the physical world, and you suddenly, on the screen of consciousness, suddenly you wake up and you're in bed and there's this physical world appears, and again you're a character within the physical world, and again there's an outer world and there are other characters that you're relating to. But from the point of view of a top-down model, you are the one consciousness in which a dream world appears and in which the whole physical universe appears. So it's completely the opposite view of you being a little isolated thing within a vast physical universe in which there's a tiny thing called consciousness. From the bottom-up view, matter is primary and consciousness is secondary. From the top-down view, consciousness is primary and matter is secondary. So the whole visible universe takes place within the still presence that you are. So that's the absolute and relative understandings. And this is a marvellous model for deconstructing your sense of being a separate doer. And from the point of view of this, everything arises from the one consciousness that you are. So all your thoughts arise from that, your feelings arise from that. And what happens is, with the sense of the physical and the subtle, we claim what is actually coming from here as our own. So we say, if I paint a great design, then I might say, wasn't that wonderful? I just painted a great design. And I claim as my own what is actually coming through from consciousness, rather than when the nice design appears, I say, gosh, that's nice, where did that come from? And Rumi tells a wonderful story about this, which I think is very important, and it's about in the Mathnavi, and it's how there's a pen writing on a bit of paper, and there are some ants wandering around on the paper, and one of the ants says, isn't it wonderful that this pen can do this writing? And another ant says, no, it's not the pen that does the writing, it's the hand that holds the pen. And another ant says, no, it's not the hand that does the writing or the pen, it's the arm that moves them. And the ants go back and back in the chain of causality until one ant, who's quite a bright ant, says that the writing is caused by none of these things. The writing is caused by the divine spirit that gives movement to all things. And that story so brilliantly, for me, illustrates this process of going back in the chain of causality. If you're the ant who says the pen's doing the writing, then you've stopped here and said, isn't it wonderful that my physical body can do this? Then you go a bit further, and like the ant with the arm, you'll say, isn't it wonderful that my psyche can do this? And it's going back and back in the causal chain of acknowledging the causality. And this process of going back in the causal chain, in the mystical traditions, they call that discrimination. And in Advaita, it's known as viveka, which is discriminative wisdom. And in Buddhism, it's known as prajna, which is the discriminative wisdom. It's almost like you're giving up lesser levels of identity. So, again, with the sense of I, it's like there's a two-way process. Anything, again, which can be observed is not I. And in India they say neti neti, not this, not this. So you can observe your physical body, so that's not I. You can observe your thoughts as they arise, so that's not I, until you come back to the witness or the ultimate observer, of which there is no observer of it. And then again, at that point, that's when you realise that everything is taking place within this presence, within this witness. And then you realise that everything you're disidentified from is actually you, but in a much larger sense. So it's like there are two stages to the process. One is disidentifying everything, and then the other is noticing that all of it actually is you. There's a great bit on that somewhere. Yes, it was by a Persian poet, Mahmud Shabistari, who I think was 14th century. And he said, there are two steps of the journey. The journey of the pilgrims is two steps and no more. One is the passing out of selfhood, and one is towards mystical union with a friend. The journey of the pilgrims is two steps and no more. One is the passing out of selfhood, and one is towards mystical union with a friend. So one is going out of that, and then when you realise the unity of everything, and it's like there's an outflowing again. So that again is the two-way flow of this circle, and the wisdom and compassion of Buddhism. So that's quite a lot to swallow in one go. Any comments or observations or?
When the causal level is seen, when the witness is seen, who is seeing?
No one sees it. It's great in that. Where's that bit I read you originally, right at the beginning, from Padmasambhava? I'm just going to read the Padmasambhava bit again because it's so relevant to this. This self-originated clear light, eternally unborn, is a parentless babe of wisdom. Wondrous is this. Being non-created is its natural wisdom. Wondrous is this. Not having known birth, it knows not death. Wondrous is this. Although it is total reality, there is no perceiver of it. Wondrous is this. Although wandering in the samsara, it remains undefiled by evil. Wondrous is this. Although seeing the Buddha, it remains unallied to good. Wondrous is this. Although possessed by all beings, it is not recognized. Wondrous is this. Those not knowing the fruit of his yoga seek other fruit. Wondrous is this. Although the clear light of reality shines within one's own mind, the multitude look for it elsewhere. Wondrous is this. Why I find that wondrous is that what it's saying is the not knowing is part of the wondrousness. So the fact that we all forget who we are and all perceive ourselves as separate and all enter into this great drama called life is part of the wondrousness of the dance. So that's the cosmic dance, really.
You could call it a cosmic joke.
You could do.
So turning is a practice to get away from the realm of mind, body, am I right? And duality and good, bad and dark and the rest, into the causal and into the neutralized stillness, at least. And that's up to maybe desire, moving even further up into the realm of divine. So, am I right? That's a practice to try to get into another level of order.
You're not really getting into another level of order. What things like turning and meditation and yoga and Tai Chi and everything else does is it quite gently shows you what's already there that you haven't noticed. So it's like already this is just a metaphor and doesn't exist as just the divine level. So already that's the case. But from the point of view of the drama, in order that a drama can take place, we have this sort of divine hypnosis. So you experience yourself as you identify with a mind-body mechanism, and that sort of is like a consensus view which is overlaid on top of the unity. With the different methods, all they really do is this bit gets silenced, and you start to notice that what you are already and always have been, and what's looking out through your eyes, is already the great stillness in the great ocean. So it's like the different methods just show you what's already happening. And then, in the same way that you learned separation at the beginning of your life, you were taught separation. As you gradually become more aware of the great stillness, it's like you gradually unlearn separation until you realise, because already, right this minute, what's looking out through your eyes, what you are, your basic sense of being, your sense of aliveness, is the one mind. But the vehicle of consciousness, which in your case is called Mansa, is claiming that as its own. So it's just a question of noticing something which is already happening.
And that's possible to let the beloved, or what we may call God, or absolute or divine, shining through us like light into a mirror.
Yeah. What happens with methods like meditation and turning is this area around here starts to become what's sometimes called transparent. And again, the analogy of the mirror is used, the clear mirror. Rumi uses that quite a bit. And it's just like a realization. It is almost like your sort of sense of a separate self gets more and more transparent. It's just like something is flowing through you. Which again, any creative artist or writer knows that already, but your ideas are coming from somewhere beyond you.
So turning and meditation, they're very similar.
I think they are very similar, yeah. Because with meditation, you sit down to meditate, and it normally, if you're like me, your sort of attention wanders off, and then you have to bring it back again. With turning, when you're out there turning up in the samahani, which is what the floor's called, it's impossible to think random thoughts and turn at the same time. If you start to think, you'll lose your turn, and then you'll get all wobbly. So you go back to attending. So with turning, it's quite good because the one point of attention is all built into the technique. So you can't turn and think random thoughts at the same time, as you're discovering.
Philip, going back to the witness, but isn't it for most of us, when we stop to look at the silence, there's a feeling that I am looking back at it, as in like there's a personality looking back at that, and it's, do you know what I mean? It doesn't feel as if there's silence asserting itself forwards. It's as if, there's the person looking back at something which is always there, but it's not me, but it's always there in the background. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying.
Because when most people talk about the witness, it's as if it's an object that the personality is stopping to look back at.
Yeah.
It's as if, there's Wayne, and then there's this silence in the background, which is always there, but it's not really me. It's just something that's there, rather than I am that silence and Wayne is in front of me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so with the turning, does that change that perspective? Or
Yes, that's that phrase we use, the background becomes the foreground. In the normal state of affairs, this is in the foreground, Wayne is here, and there's something behind Wayne which never changes, whereas Wayne keeps changing all the time. One day Wayne will be an old man, but this thing will still be just the same.
Yeah.
And it's like the process of life is so amazing. I think we mentioned it at the first meeting. Everything that happens in your life, from the point of view of this model, is all a part of this, what's known as the pathless path, back to the realization of who you really are. So in your life, you'll have all these different experiences. You'll fall in love, and you'll get ill, and you'll lose your job, and you'll get another job, and you'll have a wonderful time, and you'll have a horrible time, and people you love will die, and new people will be born. And through all of that, it's like it's specially designed to take you back to the realization of your essential nature. So you go through all these things through life, and you have all these traumas and blissful times, and as it goes on, it is like the background just emerges. It's always been there, but it's noticed that it's suddenly become primary. It's no longer secondary. It's no longer somewhere back there. It's like it's out in front of you shouting.
Right.
It's a great thing. It's, again, as we said last week, it means that you can trust the process of your life. You don't have to panic. It's almost like you can relax in your seat and you watch life unfolds. And if your particular role in the movie requires that you work very hard and you act, then that action will arise. At other times in your life, it will require that you don't do much and you step back, but whatever's required will be drawn out of you within that drama. Next time I'm going to give you a bit more detail on this, but I don't want to bombard you with too much. And also you've probably had quite a tiring lesson today, holding up your stick. And if you've got any questions on your training, do ask them now, because this is your sort of sharing and processing group. You did look great, all of you, with your sticks.
It is tough though.
It is tough. It's a very tough training. I always loved it when I got handed the stick. So it's like you can sort of rest with it.
Well, you can't. You think you are resting your arms, but no.
Well, you wait till later and you've got your arms up without the stick. Then when someone gives you a stick, thank heaven.
That's what I thought when having the stick. I was like, oh no. It was faulty then. I didn't think, I enjoy it.
It seems to be easier with the stick.
Yeah, I agree.
You did very well with the stick. It sort of straightened you up quite a bit.
Yes. I'm not going to say it.
And I mean, I find that when, like about the nail, now the nail is my friend. I'll talk to it every night before I go to bed. But it's like when you do it right, it does not hurt you at all. It just kind of just turns you. As you say, I did feel, I had a glimpse of being turned. It was just that moment, it was just so lovely. And I want more of that. And then after half an hour when we're there, it does sometimes hurt. You think, but it's just, I can't wait to get back on it. And it's just wonderful. It's like,
You didn't think you'd be saying that.
I'm like, what do I sign up for? What's this? What am I doing this? But again, it goes is what you were saying. I don't know what you were saying now. Yeah, it is a lot, and I'm not even sure I'm following you. But I'm using a lot what you're saying in my life right now, because once I sign up for this course, you know, yeah, what to say, something did happen as it does with everyone, and things come up. But I'm more the observer. I'm not involved with the drama that's going on out there, either with myself or my family, or whatever is going on. So I'm handling so much better. It's like the course has grounded me in a way that I haven't felt before, like, you know. And sometimes, yeah, I feel pulled from this grounding to, I know, yeah, I feel like a big tree. So it's really good. It's given me a lot of strength.
I do agree with that. We are trusting ourselves and we are trusting our track as well. We are learning that. It helps a lot.
I'm pleased about that.
Yeah.
During the process of a turning training, the changes which will happen internally often are reflected externally as well. And it's not uncommon for big life changes to happen. And so, be warned.
Life is not easy, training is not easy either.
No. There's in life, I'll explain this more when we do the symbolism of the ceremony. There's a great bit from a poem by Robert Bly where he says, "We did not come to remain whole, we came to lose our leaves, like the trees that are broken, and start again, drawing up from the great roots." Now, both with life and the turning ceremony and the training, at a certain point you realise that you can't get through it as a separate self, and you have to hand over and acknowledge something bigger. So that's both the process of your life path and your training and every ceremony. You have to, it makes you acknowledge who's really doing it.
And you know, just watching you as well on the ceremony on Friday, I had tears in my eyes. I thought it was so beautiful. It was like really, really touching. Very touching, very beautiful.
It's like a perfectly choreographed work of art. When you get upstairs and Helen will keep rubbing in the detail, every little bit of the detail is so important. And when all the turners get that detail, then it is like looking at a perfectly composed work of art or hearing a perfectly composed bit of music. It's so well designed. You've got another lesson tomorrow, and according to my high-tech gadget, it's time to end, I think. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll be back tomorrow, hopefully.
Yes.